Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful series on the Passionate Professional. I hope that you are all getting all the information, all the learnings to help you get your dream career. And today we have Susan Howell, the MoneyMaestra, and she will explain more about what that is. And you know how I typically read to you what somebody's passion is about or what their bio is about. Well, Susan's a little different. And I want her today to tell her story because I think it's important as we all learn how to convey our value, that it really comes from our own personal story. So I think that Susan is such an amazing storyteller. Why should I tell it for her? So today, I'd love to introduce Susan. How are you, Susan?
I am fabulous. How are you today, Deborah?
I'm great. So, Susan, tell us how you became a passionate professional. How did your passion begin? What is your story?
So my story is I grew up in Connecticut and I grew up without money. And I had a mom who was an amazing mom, but she did not work. She didn't drive. She did not have any money of her own. And she was, entirely dependent on my father for money. And my father was a good man, but he was a man that had a little bit of a drinking problem. And a lot of our money went to that. And so growing up, I saw that if you don't have money of your own and you don't have control over money, it makes your choices limited. And I saw this happen on a daily basis in my house. And I can say I was probably, maybe 8, 9, 10, where I was like, not me, not me, not me. And I really became that young person that, I pet sat, I babysat, I waitressed as soon as I could. I worked in a department, anything I could do to get money so that I could be in control of my own money. And I started educating myself. And I joke because we played school a lot in my neighborhood. And I was always like, I'm the teacher. I'm the teacher. When we played Monopoly, I'm like, I'm the banker. And so I always had this sense of money has a lot to do with freedom. And so I took it upon myself to educate myself at a young age, to really start learning how money worked. My mom taking me to the bank so I could open up my first savings account. And remember, way back when we had passbooks. So every time you made a deposit, you would see your balance increasing. And so then I was the first person in my immediate family to go to college. Wow. And after college, I started working first as a paralegal for the state attorney's office. That was short-lived. But then I worked for the IRS. On the civil side, I was a tax collector and a revenue officer. And then I became a special agent, first with the IRS and then with the Department of Justice Inspector General. And that's where I finished my career. I did 22 years as a special agent and then, senior special agent the last 10 years. And then I told myself I wanted to retire young. And I had been working towards early retirement starting from my 20s. So 2 weeks, I put my notice on my boss's desk the day after my 50th birthday, and I walked out 2 weeks after my 50th birthday, and I created MoneyMaestra.
That's an amazing story. You know what I'd like you to explain a little bit is what did that actually look like? Like as you're telling the story, was it the dialogue, the conversations between your dad and your mom that kind of resonated with you, the narrative that said, I don't want to have these kinds of conversations? Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like? Was her just saying, do you have any money? Or I need money for the market, or I need money to buy Susan something. Was it like that?
I'll tell you, and this is a very visceral memory for me.
Yeah.
Back then, you got paid in cash, or maybe he got a check and then he cashed it. I don't know. But by the time he came home on Fridays, and my memory is he got paid weekly, not bi-weekly, but he would come home on Fridays after he had, and no disrespect to my dad. My dad had an issue that he, wasn't dealing with. But after stopping at the package store and then stopping at the local bar, he'd come home. And he would dish out money to my mother. And I can remember the bills coming out of his wallet and giving her the money. And basically, I don't remember the exact conversation, but something to the effect of, this is your money for the week. And, you know, my mom had to pay the bills. She had to buy the groceries. She had to take care of me. I'm one of 5, but I was so much younger that by that point I was the only child at home. And, or maybe my brother was still at home, but most of my childhood, it was just me. And I remember that. And I remember thinking, no, what if she runs out of money? What if she, you know, she had no other way to get money? And it was so limiting to her. And what I remember as a child is that my mom was a generous woman, but we never had enough money. No, we don't have money for that. We always bought, you know, we bought the store brand. We got clothes either secondhand or we got them from someone. And then when I was older, I remember this because I thought it was like a windfall. They got Social Security. My parents were much older, so they got a special Social Security supplement because they had a child my age, even though they were older. So all of a sudden I got some money to like buy clothes. My mom would say, well, this is because you're, you know, we're getting this for you. And so I remember thinking as like a pretty young teenager, like, wow, I actually have some money, you know, from my parents to go and buy clothes. But most of my childhood, you know, we didn't take vacations. We just didn't have money. And I realized that it was limiting, very limiting.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Isn't it incredible? Those limiting beliefs or those beliefs we have, in your case, the opposite
Right.
of where those come from in our childhood, you know, what we hold on to, what we want to release. So how did the Money Maestra come after all that illustrious background? How did that come up for you?
Well, when my son was either a junior or I think a junior in high school, I started asking him, and I was teaching him about money at school. And I was, I don't want to say a single parent because his dad was very much in the picture, but, you know, I was raising him here with me and I knew I was teaching him some money skills. But I said, well, what are they teaching you at school about personal finance? And he said, nothing. And I'm like, you're not learning anything about personal finance? No, Mom. So I took it upon myself to call the principal, who my neighbor knew. And I said, hey, can you make an introduction to me? I want to ask the principal if I can teach a financial literacy wellness seminar to the juniors and seniors. And so it was so funny because the school was like, we don't have any money to pay you. I'm like, I'm not asking for payment. I'm going to do this because my son's a junior and I think they need to learn this. So I had an auditorium of kids. I had put together, you know, juniors and seniors. I had put together a PowerPoint and a presentation. I did it probably an hour and a half, maybe. And their hands were like hand after hand after hand. And the light bulb went off. And I probably had maybe 2 more years to work after that before I was 50. So I probably did that when I was 48. And I said, I'm going to create a company that teaches people how to be financially well. And so I had another company with a very long name that didn't quite work. And then during COVID, I had to go, and I was teaching in person, but during COVID, I had to go virtual. And I was like, this long name isn't really working. Let me come up with something else that resonates more with me and with people. So Money Maestra, which is money, of course, and then Maestra is female teacher in Spanish. So I thought that was a proper Miami name.
That is so cool. And what exactly were you teaching them then? And that, I just think obviously that's brilliant and that people need to know that. And we don't teach that in school. And I just pray that changes now moving forward. What exactly were the questions? Like, what did they want to know? And what were you teaching them?
And I go in initially and I teach what I call the core money skills. Like there's a set of skills that you just need to know about money. And if you don't know these skills and you don't understand how money works at this basic level, it's going to mess you up and it's going to cause issues that wouldn't need to happen if you knew how money functions. So I go in and I teach what I call the core money skills. And so the questions I was getting were things like, what are taxes? Do I have to pay taxes? What do I do when I get my first job? And so I did this thing where I'd say, okay, so you think you're making X amount per hour. And so if you do the math, this is what your paycheck should be. But then when you get your paycheck, it's a big surprise. That's not what you get because the taxes come out. And I started talking to them about that. And also just about spending. Like, well, should I be saving money? Should I be, a lot of questions about saving and spending, but just I saw this desire to understand how money worked. And I started investing at age 23. It changed the course of my life. Hence, one of the reasons I could retire at 50 is because I started investing at 23. And so I teach young people, like, I don't care if you have an extra $50 a month. If we can start, getting you on a plan where you're thinking future minded, living in the present, living in the now, but putting a little away for the future. To me, I became, comfortable. I don't want to say wealthy, but very comfortable enough to retire based on taking a percentage out of my paycheck every pay period before I even saw the money, before I even knew what it felt like to live on that money. And then bam, 27 years later, which I know for young people seems like a lifetime, but goes to this,
right?
I have all this money that I felt like I didn't do anything but work my job. I just took it off the top every paycheck. And so that's something I really hammer into the young people. Let's start young. Make time work for you.
Wow. And what percentage did you say that one should take off the top, what they make?
Well,
I guess it varies. And where did you put it into?
Well, I worked for the government for all those years. So the government had funds and, and then you chose what fund. I did not, at that point in my life, I didn't use a financial planner or anything like that. I just made the decisions on my own, and there were limited choices, but I had it in different funds. But what I did is, in the beginning, I was making so little money that I don't remember if I took 5%, but the number one thing is if you have a match, which I was lucky enough to have a 401k match, of course, you're going to invest at least the match because that's free money. But I started, say it was 5 or 6% when I started. Then when I'd get a raise, I'd take a percentage of that raise and put it to my future savings. So I just made it to the point where I never really even knew what it was like to live on my full salary, because I always took the money off the top. And that's like one of my secret tricks is, don't get used to what it feels like to make $50,000. Get used to what it feels like to make 45 and put that 5 away. And I promise you'll be thanking me 20 years later, And so, and I basically changed the course of my life through investing a percentage of my paycheck every time I got paid.
That is amazing. What would you suggest to young adults today that are in college, right? And maybe have an internship or a job or whatever. So, not the 401ks, but is there a fund that they should set up, like their savings fund? What were some of the choices that they might, or options that they might have today? Because I'm sure people don't even know, that idea that you just said, and then where do they put it?
Yeah. So I cannot give investment advice because I do not hold a license and I can't invest other people's money. So I will give general advice. The first thing I say is create an emergency fund, because an emergency fund, especially when you're young, the first emergency fund is $1,000. Get $1,000, however you have to get it, paycheck by paycheck or birthday gifts or if you get a windfall, and put it away. And that's your emergency fund. And then build on that. Try not to spend that for anything except true emergencies, and then build on that. And ultimately, a fully funded emergency fund is, first, it's 3 months of living expenses. And then a fully funded is 6 months. And I tell people, don't get overwhelmed by that. You're just banking away a little bit of money in this emergency fund. So when the car breaks down, or you have a health issue, or something happens that is a true emergency, you're not going into debt over an emergency. You're pulling it from the money you've been setting aside. So that's my first piece of advice to young people is, I call it giving yourself levels of security. And the first level of security is create an emergency fund. And then start investing, but at least get $1,000 in the bank that you put somewhere and you're like, that's my $1,000 to know that if something happens and I need money quickly, it's there. I don't have to borrow it. I don't have to put it on a credit card. Build on that. And then start investing. And you can go to, when you're young, a lot of financial houses will require a certain amount of money in order to invest with them. But when you're young, you can go to a Fidelity or a Vanguard, or, pick one of the big firms that don't require minimums, or if they do, it's $1,000 or $5,000. And work with their financial planners, because they have people there. And then when you make more money, when your money starts making money, then you can decide, do I want to go somewhere where I'm going to actually have somebody like now, I have a significant amount of money. I don't want to manage my own money anymore. I have it managed by somebody that's all they do all day. But it takes a while to be able to get to that person because, there's usually initial requirements of you need X amount of money in your account before you can work with certain higher end financial planners, or not financial planners, but financial investment firms.
Right. So does Vanguard and Fidelity and all of those kind of places, though, when you say you work, like, let's say a young adult, a kid in college, coming out of college, wanting to put the monies away, works with a Vanguard or Fidelity or whatever, do they take a percentage of that? So if somebody brought them $1,000, does a bit of that come out for the...
Yeah, usually there's, and they're all different and you have to talk to somebody. And I did this with my son. I said, buddy, I'll help you, but I want you to start thinking about this. And so what my son did is he went and talked to Fidelity. Apparently he was not that impressed. And he said, Mom, I'm going to take my $5,000 and I'm going to invest it myself. And I said, okay, you can do that. And he opened up an E-Trade account, which I'm not saying I recommend, but this is my son who has kind of a high risk factor like me. And I said, okay, but you know that you could lose all that money. You have to be prepared. And he said, I understand that, but I'm young. I love my son. He's like, I'm young enough, Mom, to play. And if I lose the money, I still have plenty of time to recoup it. So my son chose to do that. He chose to open up an E-Trade account and trade on his own. But that's obviously more risky. But if you go, yes, they take a percentage. Sometimes it's based on trade. Sometimes it's an overall 1%, 1.5%, 2%. It depends. And these are questions. Like if I was advising somebody, say, I can't tell you where to invest or how, but I can give you some questions that you should ask the person that you're going to invest your money with. How are you charging me? When does the percentage come out? Is it only on trade? Or are you charging me an annual percentage? There's all these questions that people don't even know to ask.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yes.
Right. They don't know the questions to ask. Like I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, God, I wish I had known this as a young adult. I mean, it's funny you say that because I remember my father giving me some monies that he had put away, even at 27, 28 years old. I thought it was like play money. And I remember taking it to Lehman Brothers at the time. The guy goes, I'm going to make you 15%. I didn't even know what 15% was. I'm like, okay, that's something. And then I was like investing in like Panda Express. Like I just thought it was fun. And of course the money was gone in 6 months, like gone. Yeah. And I'll never forget that. And I think it's so important because my father didn't realize that I was like illiterate, that I was financially illiterate. And I think there's no time like today, like you say, like what you're teaching your son or young people, if you're going to be literate in anything, not so much art history. It is, honestly, it is financial to have financial freedom.
Absolutely. And this is what my theory behind what I do is I say to people, sometimes people will be like, because there's resistance. There's always resistance around money. Either fear or I don't really do well with numbers. That's boring. I don't want to. I said, okay, first of all, money is never boring because money is the currency of life. And anything that you're doing right now that you like costs money on some level. And then once you figure out how money works and you get, fluent in money, then you create space, freedom, relaxation to live the life of your dreams. And that is why I do what I do. Be responsible on the front end, understand how it works, make it work for you. And then, I'm older than 50, but at 50 years old, I was able to just walk out the door because I wanted to. And I haven't looked back. I loved my job. I loved being an agent, but I had been an agent for 22 years. I knew I had more in me. I had arrested enough people. I had, worked. And I was like, it's time to do something else. And when that happened at school with my son, I was like, and this is what I want to do.
So where have you taken it, Susan? What are you doing now to educate and enlighten other people? What is it? What is your passion now? How have you taken that passion into your profession, into your pursuits?
So what I do have individual one-on-one clients.
Okay.
Which, I have what I call my signature program is called Budget Like a Boss, because I am a firm believer in you have to budget your money. If you don't know where your money's going every month, it's going to go away. And once you know, there's freedom in a budget. So that's my signature. When I get a new client, I'll say, let's start with this. Let's start with, if you don't have a budget, let's create a budget for you. Start with Budget Like a Boss. And then people usually meet with me once or twice a month I'm basically a money coach. I help them make choices, and I think the beauty of me is I don't want to invest your money. I'm not going to tell you where to invest your money, but I'm going to help you keep your money in a place that it can work for you. And then every client's different. Like for me, a lot of my free money goes to travel because that's another passion of mine. But I work with each client individually. So I do that. And then I also have some workshops that are group workshops. I have a women, money, and relationships workshop. And this is one of my favorites. It's, ladies, you bring money into every relationship you have, whether you know it or not. So let's optimize how we bring money into our relationships. And so we do this I usually teach it as a 3-part series, and it's small class, small workshops. And we, sign a non-disclosure, and what's said here stays here. But we get to the heart of what are the money hangups? What's keeping you from having a good relationship with money? And how are you bringing your relationship with money into every other relationship you have in your life?
Oh, sign me up for that one. When
I know
that?
I'm due for another one soon. And and then I do a special one for students. I have, a student financial success course. I say anyone like 30 or under that never really learned this stuff. And I'm also now starting to go into B2B, where I'm talking to employers and saying, listen, you have wellness plans, but what I don't see in your wellness plan is a financial wellness. And so I'm coming at it from that angle now and getting both nonprofits and businesses. So far, I've been working with small businesses and nonprofits to try to get employers or communities to offer this financial, and I'm calling it, let's call it financial wellness. We need to be well. And so that's sort of where I'm going next with it, is breaking into the B2B world, the nonprofit world, and trying to reach people in a larger area, because it really needs to get out there. And then ultimately, I also public speak. So if somebody wants to hire me to public speak at an event, I can speak about this at an event. But yeah, that's how and so I mix it up between one-on-one and group, but it's just,
you love it.
Fills me. I love it. And when I see the light bulb go off, or a client texts me and says, oh, Susan, I need to tell you something. It's just like, I'm like, this is why I do what I do.
I love it. I love it. What advice can you give to people who may want to maybe do something with you? I mean, in a way, you kind of took a side hustle, or a mindset of a side hustle and made it into your business, which of course is really the way to go, quite frankly, moving forward in our lives, right? With the pandemic and everything, of how to form. This is what's so fascinating speaking to you today, is you made your side hustle, or a thought of a side hustle, into your business and have become very successful out of it. So what would you say to people? What bit of advice can you say to kids that want their passion to be their pursuits and to give their passion a chance? What would be some words of advice?
So what I would say is there's only one you, and you get to live your life. I am all about freedom and choice. And I think, I say a few silent thank yous regularly to my parents, because I saw what it looked like not to have freedom and choice. And so I did a 180. And so believe in yourself. I said, I knew that the ticket out of my life was me. That was the ticket out, me. And from a young age, I said, Susan, you're you. And there's only one you. So what is it that you want to do? And the other thing I haven't spoken much about is, I do have an extreme love of nature. That was one of my major outlets when I was a child. So I'm even able to work in like gardening and money metaphors into garden metaphors into my money. So I incorporate my other passion of nature into my business. And at some point I want to do some like nature finance kind of immersion thing, because I think that would be a beautiful way for people to be relaxed and experience money. But bank on yourself. And there are going to be people that are naysayers. If you know it in your heart, and all you can do, all that can happen is you try and it doesn't work, you know, so what? So what? But if you don't try, then you're always going to say, what if? And I want to live my life so that I don't have what ifs, that I say, no, I did it. And it was either really successful or it wasn't. And then I went on to something else. But believe in yourself, bank on yourself, and be resilient.
Great words of advice. You know what's coming up for me? That this time saying bank on yourself, after you've explained what your passion is and how you came to it, I could really see that vision now as a bank. And we are banking when we're putting monies in. It's not to an institution or whatever, to other people. It really is giving to ourselves. I love that. Susan, how can people, and I'm sure from this, will want to reach out to you, me included. How can people reach out to you?
So I would ask that you follow me on Instagram at MoneyMaestra, and I'm also on Facebook at MoneyMaestra. I'm on LinkedIn under my personal name, Susan Howell, on LinkedIn. And also you can go to MoneyMaestra.com and it'll tell you more about me, about my programs, about what I have happening. I write a blog. You can, if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get my blog, and I give a lot of free finance, free money advice, budgeting advice. And also, we didn't talk too much about this, but so much about money is the positive money mindset. I believe that I am capable of making money, of creating ways to make money. I believe this is a world of abundance, even though there's a lot of scarcity out there. I will not operate on a scarcity mindset. And so I teach a lot about money mindset and how to get over little hurdles, and they're just little hurdles, but in the big picture, there is so much abundance in the world and there's enough money for everybody.
I agree with you. And, I work with a lot of people that say, oh, I can't start this. There's going to be a recession. Little note to self, you can make the most money, the best money in a recession. Yes. So you're absolutely right. It is a mindset beyond mindsets. Susan, you are amazing.
Thank you.
I hope that everybody really gleaned the passion and the way that we can go about really giving to ourselves in that way, and how important it is, because we work hard for our money and our money should work for us. So 100%. I cannot thank you enough. Have a great day. And thank you so much for being on The Passionate Professional.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.